Ever heard of a map that doesn't just show you the way, but changes the way things were? This isn't just a story about a dusty old piece of parchment. It's about a map that rewrites reality itself. It all started with a group of urban explorers, for friends who thought they'd seen it all. They were deep inside the forgotten wing of the city's oldest library, a place sealed off for over a century. Behind a false bookshelf, they found a small, iron-bound chest. And inside was the map. It wasn't like any map they'd ever seen. It was drawn on a material that felt like leather and paper combined, and the ink seemed to shimmer, almost breathe. The moment they unrolled it, they knew something was wrong. It depicted their own city, but with subtle, unsettling differences. A park where a skyscraper should be, a river flowing where there was now a highway. Liam, the group's skeptic, scoffed and tried to fold it back up. But when he looked again, the park was gone, replaced by a strange, spiraling labyrinth. Every time they looked away and looked back, the map had changed. Landmarks would flicker, streets would reroute themselves, and new, impossible places would bloom into existence on the parchment. They were intrigued, maybe a little spooked, but their curiosity won. They decided to follow it, just for fun. The map seemed to be leading them towards a part of the old industrial district they knew well. Or at least, they thought they did. As they walked, following the map's bizarre route, the first strange thing happened. Maya, the historian of the group, stopped dead in her tracks. She pointed to a familiar old brick building. "Wait," she said, "wasn't this the old textile mill? The one that burned down in the 80s? Liam and the others nodded, but Maya shook her head, confused. "No, I remember it being a cannery. My grandfather told me stories about working there." The others just laughed it off, chalking it up to a fuzzy memory. But it was the first crack in the dam of their reality. The further they followed the map, the more these cracks appeared. Little things, at first. A street sign with a name none of them recognized. A cafe they swore was never there before. A favorite childhood mural on a wall that was suddenly, inexplicably, blank brick. Their own memories started to feel unreliable. It was like trying to grasp smoke. Ben, the photographer, was scrolling through old pictures on his phone, trying to prove a point about a statue they all remembered. But the photos weren't there. In fact, his entire gallery from their trip to Spain last year was just gone. He swore he took hundreds of photos. Now, his phone's timeline suggested he was home that whole summer. He started to panic, but Liam, ever the rational one, blamed it on a software glitch. But a cold knot of fear was tightening in all their stomachs. The real terror began when their own bodies started to change. Liam, who'd been obsessively checking the map, suddenly flinched, clutching his arm. A long, faded scar ran down his forearm, from his elbow to his wrist. "Where did this come from?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "I've never had this scar." Maya looked at him, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. "Liam, you've always had that scar. Don't you remember? You fell off your bike when we were kids, at the old quarry." Liam stared at her, his face pale. "What quarry? We never went to a quarry. I fell off the swings at the park and broke my wrist." They were both right, and they were both wrong. Two separate pasts were now fighting for space in the same present. History wasn't just being remembered differently. It was actively being rewritten around them, and the map was the pen. It felt alive now. When they argued about which way to go, the paths on the parchment would writhe and twist, as if frustrated. When they felt a surge of determination, a clear, golden line would appear, guiding them forward. It was leading them to a place that, according to every record and memory they had left, did not exist. An empty, derelict plot of land on the edge of town. Yet, the map showed a house. A grand, Victorian house with a distinctive widow's walk. They arrived at the location, a desolate field of weeds and rubble. There was nothing there. Defeated and utterly terrified, they were about to turn back. But as Ben raised his camera to take a picture of the empty lot, he gasped. Through the lens, for a fleeting second, he saw it. The house, standing right there. They decided to wait. As twilight bled across the sky, a strange mist began to roll in, thick and cold. And within the mist, an outline began to form. First faint, then solid. The Victorian house materialized before their eyes, pulling itself out of nothingness. The air grew still, and the front door creaked open, an unspoken invitation. Inside, everything was pristine, yet coated in a thin layer of dust, as if it had been waiting for them. And on the walls were photographs. They saw themselves as children, playing in the yard of this very house. They saw graduation photos, holiday gatherings, birthday parties, all taking place within these walls. A life they never lived, a past that should have been. In a study, they found journals detailing their alternate lives. Lives where their parents hadn't divorced, where a beloved sibling hadn't died young, where their greatest regrets had never happened. It was a perfect, painless existence. And it was a lie. The map lay on a grand mahogany table in the center of the room, its surface now still and calm, showing only the house. They understood then. The map didn't just lead them to a place. It offered them a choice. Stay here, in this perfect, manufactured past, or return to their real, messy, painful lives. Leaving the house was the hardest thing they'd ever done. They placed the map back on the table, turned their backs on the ghosts of their better selves, and walked out into the mist. The house vanished behind them as if it had never been. They thought it was over. They tried to burn the memory from their minds, to go back to normal. But you can't go back to a normal that no longer exists. The next morning, Liam woke up and the scar was gone. But when he looked out his window, the street was different. The familiar oak tree on the corner was replaced by a weeping willow. Maya called in a panic. The entire local museum had been rearranged, displaying artifacts from a city history she no longer recognized. The world they had returned to wasn't the one they had left. It was subtly altered. The map was gone, but its work wasn't finished. It was still out there, somewhere, rewriting the world one memory, one street, one life at a time. And the most terrifying part is, how would you even know if your past was rewritten? You'd just wake up one day, in a world that feels right, never knowing the life you lost. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy stories that mess with your head, make sure to subscribe for more.